My name is Sophie, and I am 32 years old. The fancy restaurant buzzed with celebration for my mother's birthday, but beneath the surface tension simmered. I never expected my father to stand up glass in hand and announce to everyone that I was no longer family. The shock froze me as applause erupted around the table. My sister smirked victoriously. As numbness washed over me, a strange calm followed. I had prepared for this moment. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments and hit subscribe for more real stories. Trust me, what I did changed everything. I grew up in what most would consider a privileged family in suburban Connecticut. My father, Richard, built his reputation as a cutthroat corporate attorney, while my mother, Margaret, managed the regional branch of a prestigious bank. From the outside, we were the picture-perfect American family with our spacious colonial house, manicured lawn, and 2 daughters who always dressed impeccably for Sunday church. But inside those walls, perfection came at a cost. My father operated our family like one of his legal cases, where anything less than excellence was considered failure. I learned this lesson early, when I brought home my first report card in 2nd grade. 5 A's and 1 B+ in penmanship. Most parents would celebrate such achievement, but not Richard Hamilton. "Sophie, what happened here?" He asked, his finger tapping rhythmically on the B+ while completely ignoring my other grades. "My teacher said my handwriting needs to be neater," I explained, still hopeful he would acknowledge my other subjects. "Hamiltons do not accept mediocrity," he replied coldly. "When you bring home anything less than perfect, you embarrass this family." I was 7 years old. This pattern continued throughout my childhood. No accomplishment was ever good enough. State spelling bee champion, the national champion practiced more. Scholarship to college. Anyone could get into that school if they applied. Meanwhile, my younger sister Alexis navigated our home with entirely different rules. 3 years my junior, she somehow escaped our father's impossible standards. Her B grades were showing improvement. Her participation trophies deserved prominent display. When she decided against college to find herself, my father funded her apartment in New York City without question. "Your sister is artistic," my mother would explain whenever I pointed out the double standard. "She needs space to grow into her potential." I needed space too, but that wasn't an option for me. Instead, I worked weekends throughout high school, saved for college, and maintained a perfect GPA because anything less would mean losing what little approval I occasionally received. My mother, Margaret, was a contradiction. In her professional life, she commanded respect as a skilled financial manager. At home, however, she transformed into a different person around my father. Her opinions evaporated in his presence. During his criticisms of me, she would sit silently occasionally, offering a weak, "Richard, perhaps that's a bit harsh," that he would immediately dismiss. Her mantra, whispered to me privately after particularly brutal encounters with my father, was always the same. "Family is everything, Sophie. Sometimes we must bend to keep the peace." I bent until I nearly broke. Despite everything, I graduated summa cum laude from Cornell University with a double major in finance and business management. I secured a position at a top financial firm in Manhattan, quickly advancing to senior financial advisor by age 28. My clients included several Fortune 500 executives and even a few minor celebrities. I purchased my own condo overlooking Central Park. By conventional metrics, I had succeeded beyond expectation. Yet whenever I visited home, I reverted to that 7-year-old girl desperate for approval. "Investment advising isn't real finance," my father commented during one holiday dinner. "You are basically a glorified salesperson." I had just closed a deal that would secure my clients millions in retirement savings. The bonus alone was more than most people make in a year. None of that mattered in the Hamilton household. Last year, something unexpected happened. Through industry connections, I learnt that my father's law firm was facing serious financial troubles. Several major clients had left after losing high-profile cases. There were rumors of potential bankruptcy. Out of genuine concern, I approached him with an offer to help. "Dad, I've heard about the situation at the firm," I said carefully during a private moment at my parents' anniversary party. "I have some connections who specialize in restructuring legal practices. I could introduce you." His face hardened instantly. "You think I need help from my daughter, financial advice from a girl who plays with other people's money?" "I'm just trying to help the family," I explained. "When I need advice on which lipstick matches your purse." "Sophie, I'll call you," he snapped. "Until then, stay out of my business." The irony was that despite his dismissal of my career, I was the person he and my mother trusted with their finances. For tax purposes, their luxury Mercedes was registered in my name. More significantly, I was made co-manager of the family trust account that held most of their assets. My father explained this was simply because of my convenient location to the bank's main branch, not because of any financial expertise I possessed. I accepted this arrangement, believing that perhaps this was his way of showing trust even if he couldn't verbalize it. I would later realize how naive that assumption had been. Despite my father's rejection of my help, I kept tabs on his firm's situation through industry contacts. The news was worse than he had admitted. 3 major corporate clients had withdrawn their business. A senior partner had left, taking a significant portion of clients with him. Tax liens had been filed. The prestigious Hamilton Legal Services was not just struggling, it was in free fall. While I worried about the implications for my parents' retirement security, I never imagined how desperately my father would act to save his crumbling empire, or how his actions would finally force me to stand up for myself in a way I never had before. The first sign that something was seriously wrong came in February, when I received an automated alert from the bank that managed our family trust. As co-manager, I was notified of any substantial withdrawals. My father had removed $50,000 without discussion. While technically legal since he had access, we had always operated with the understanding that large withdrawals would be discussed between us. When I called him about it, his explanation seemed reasonable enough. Just a temporary transfer to cover some firm expenses while we await payment from a major client, he assured me. It will be replaced next month with interest. I wanted to believe him, so I did. But when a second withdrawal of $75,000 appeared 3 weeks later, I knew something was wrong. This time when I called, he was defensive. I do not need to explain myself to my own daughter about how I use family funds, he barked. The money is going back into the business that built this family's wealth in the first place. Dad, I'm worried about the pattern here, I tried to explain. The firm seems to be in serious trouble. Maybe we should look at restructuring options or even selling before things get worse. There was a long silence before he replied, his voice ice cold. Your mother and I agreed when we had children that it was a shame our firstborn wasn't a son. You've just reminded me why. The comment stung more than I wanted to admit. After hanging up, I did what my professional training demanded. I researched. Through financial databases and legal industry contacts, I compiled a comprehensive analysis of Hamilton Legal Services' current state. The picture was grim. The firm wasn't just struggling, it was effectively insolvent. They were missing payroll-deferring partner distributions and had received default notices from their office space landlord. With this information, I prepared a professional presentation outlining several potential pathways forward, from restructuring to bankruptcy protection to an orderly dissolution that would protect my parents' personal assets. I called my mother and requested a family dinner to discuss important financial matters. "Can it wait, dear?" she asked, sounding anxious. "Your father has been under so much stress lately." "That's exactly why we need to talk," I explained. "I have information that might help." She reluctantly agreed, and we scheduled dinner at their home for the following Sunday. I arrived armed with my presentation spreadsheets and a list of top restructuring specialists who owed me favors. Alexis was there too, which surprised me, since family financial discussions weren't usually her concern. "I invited your sister because this affects the whole family," my mother explained, though something in her tone felt rehearsed. My father appeared unusually calm as I connected my laptop to their dining room television. I began my presentation professionally, avoiding blame or accusation. Based on my research, Hamilton Legal Services is facing a serious cash flow crisis, I explained, showing the figures. There are several options we could pursue that would protect the family assets while addressing the business challenges. I was halfway through explaining a potential restructuring plan when my father interrupted. "That's quite enough, Sophie," he said with a dismissive wave. "This is precisely why women shouldn't involve themselves in business matters. You see numbers on a page but understand nothing about legacy or reputation. Dad, this isn't about gender. The firm is nearly bankrupt. These withdrawals from the family trust are just delaying the inevitable while putting your retirement at risk." Alexis, who had been scrolling through her phone during my presentation, suddenly looked up. "Sophie always thinks she knows better than everyone else because she can make a fancy PowerPoint. Maybe if you weren't so controlling, Dad could fix his business without your interference." I was stunned by her attack. "This isn't about control, Alexis. It's about protecting our parents' future." "Girls, please," my mother interjected weakly. "Let's not argue at dinner." "There's nothing to argue about," my father declared. I built this family's wealth from nothing and I will manage it as I see fit. Sophie, your input, while marginally interesting, is unnecessary. I have the situation well in hand. The dinner deteriorated from there, with my mother pushing food around her plate in silence, my father dismissing every point I made, and Alexis smirking throughout. I left feeling defeated, but increasingly concerned about what might be happening behind the scenes. My worry proved justified when I received a call from our family banker the following week. "Ms. Hamilton, I wanted to reach out informally before this becomes official," he said, his voice low. "Your father has requested that you be removed as co-manager of the family trust. Since I've worked with your family for years, I thought you should know before the paperwork is processed." My stomach dropped. On what grounds? He didn't specify, but he seemed quite determined. I'll need to proceed with his request by next Monday unless there's some legal reason I shouldn't. I thanked him for the courtesy call and immediately contacted the family's longtime attorney, Thomas Jenkins. To my surprise, he sounded uncomfortable speaking with me. "Sophie, I'm afraid I can't discuss your parents' legal matters with you anymore," he said. "Richard has explicitly instructed me not to share information with you about family financial dealings. Thomas, we've known each other since I was a child. What's going on?" After a long pause, he spoke carefully. "I can only say that I suggested against certain actions your father wanted to take, and he is now seeking counsel elsewhere. I'm sorry, but I really can't say more." His reluctance told me everything I needed to know. My father wasn't just making bad business decisions, he was actively working to cut me out completely. The final confirmation came when I visited my parents' home unexpectedly one afternoon to speak with my mother. As I approached the study, I overheard my father and Alexis talking. "She thinks she's so clever with her financial models and business jargon," my father was saying. "We need to handle this Sophie situation once and for all." "Mom's birthday dinner would be perfect," Alexis replied. "Everyone will be there. She won't make a scene in public." Exactly. Once we announce the changes to the trust and explain how she's been trying to interfere with family matters, no one will side with her. "I've invited some friends too," Alexis added. "Strength in numbers. Sophie always backs down when she feels outnumbered." I quietly backed away, my heart pounding. The Sophie situation, they were planning to ambush me at my mother's birthday celebration. The family I had tried so desperately to please for 32 years was plotting against me as if I were an enemy rather than a daughter trying to help. That night, for the first time in my life, I didn't consider how to win my father's approval or keep the family peace. Instead, I started planning how to protect myself from the people who were supposed to protect me. The Grand Meridian restaurant was possibly the most pretentious dining establishment in Connecticut. Crystal chandeliers hung from coffered ceilings. White linen tablecloths draped over tables spaced generously apart for privacy. Waitstaff moved with choreographed precision, appearing exactly when needed and vanishing when not. My mother had always wanted to dine here, but my father considered it unnecessarily extravagant. The fact that he had chosen this venue for her 65th birthday spoke volumes about his plan. This was theatre, not celebration. I arrived 15 minutes late by design, wanting to make an entrance after everyone was seated. The private dining room held about 30 people. I recognised aunts, uncles, and family friends, but as Alexis had mentioned, there were unfamiliar faces, two primarily clustered near my sister. Her reinforcements, no doubt. My mother brightened when she saw me rising halfway from her seat before glancing at my father and settling back down. "Sophie, darling," we were beginning to worry. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible." I lied smoothly. In truth, I had been parked outside for 20 minutes gathering my courage. I kissed my mother's cheek and placed a small, elegantly wrapped package beside her. "Happy birthday, Mum." "Thank you, sweetheart. We'll open gifts after dinner." My father acknowledged me with a curt nod but said nothing. Alexis gave me a smile that never reached her eyes. "Nice of you to make time in your busy schedule, Sophie." I took the only remaining seat strategically placed opposite my father and beside an elderly great-aunt who was mostly deaf, the perfect spot to isolate me from potential allies. The first course arrived, a delicate lobster bisque that probably cost more than most people's entire dinner. Small talk circulated around the table, carefully avoiding anything substantial. Aunt Patricia discussed her garden. Uncle James mentioned his new golf clubs. A family friend commented on the unseasonably warm weather. Throughout it all, I noticed my father checking his watch repeatedly. He was waiting for something, some planned moment. Alexis kept exchanging glances with her friends, occasionally whispering behind her hand. My mother, who should have been the center of attention, seemed nervous, picking at her food and laughing too loudly at mediocre jokes. When our main courses arrived, she barely touched her sea bass. "Everything okay, Mum?" I asked quietly. "Of course, dear. Everything's wonderful." Her smile was tight, her eyes darting to my father. When Alexis began discussing her recent trip to Paris, I couldn't help but notice the expensive designer watch on her wrist and the new Louboutin shoes she had casually mentioned earlier. For someone who had been between jobs for 8 months, her lifestyle showed no signs of financial constraint. "The shopping was amazing," she gushed to her friends. "I found this adorable boutique near the Champs-Élysées where everything was just to die for." "It sounds expensive," I commented mildly. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Well, some of us know how to enjoy life, rather than counting every penny, Sophie. Some budgets have more pennies to count than others," I replied with a smile that matched hers in insincerity. An uncomfortable silence fell over our end of the table. My father cleared his throat and stood tapping his water glass with a spoon. The room quieted immediately. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate my beautiful wife's birthday," he began, his courtroom voice in full effect. "Margaret, you've been my partner, my support, and my heart for 40 wonderful years." My mother blushed appropriately as scattered applause broke out. Under normal circumstances, this would have been a touching moment. But I knew better now. This was just the opening statement before the real purpose of his speech. "Family has always been the center of our lives." He continued, his gaze sweeping the room. "The Hamilton name stands for integrity, loyalty, and tradition." His eyes fixed on me for a moment before moving on. My stomach tightened. "Sometimes, however, family can be a source of disappointment. Sometimes those we expect to stand with us instead choose to stand against us." The room grew uncomfortably quiet. A few confused glances were exchanged. "Recently, Margaret and I have faced challenges in our business. During this time, we discovered something disturbing." His voice hardened. "Someone we trusted has been working against us, attempting to take control of family assets and undermining decades of hard work." All eyes turned toward me. I sat perfectly still, my face expressionless. "It pains me deeply to say this publicly, but for the protection of our family, I must be clear." He pointed directly at me now. "Sophie has betrayed our trust. She has interfered in business matters that don't concern her. She has blocked access to family funds. She has even consulted attorneys about taking legal action against her own parents." Gasps rippled through the room. None of it was true, of course, but my father had always been persuasive. I watched as people I had known my entire life looked at me with sudden suspicion. "Therefore, with great sadness but clear resolve, Margaret and I have made a decision." He paused for dramatic effect. "Sophie is no longer considered part of this family. We have removed her from all family accounts and documents. She will no longer participate in family gatherings or decisions." The silence was absolute for 3 heartbeats. Then incredibly, someone began to applaud. Others joined hesitantly at first, then with more confidence. My sister's friends, clearly briefed in advance, clapped enthusiastically. Alexis herself wore a triumphant smile, not even attempting to hide her satisfaction. My mother stared at her plate, saying nothing, not defending me, not questioning this public humiliation of her daughter. As the applause continued, I felt a strange sensation wash over me. Not anger, not even hurt, but clarity. For the first time in my life, I saw my family exactly as they were, not as I had desperately wanted them to be. I looked around at these people applauding my excommunication from my own family and felt something unexpected relief. The constant need to please, to be good enough to earn love that should have been unconditional, suddenly felt like chains falling away. I smiled. My father, who had clearly expected tears or pleading, faltered slightly at my expression. "Do you have something to say for yourself, Sophie?" I stood, slowly smoothed my dress and nodded. "Actually, I do." The room fell silent again, all eyes on me. Alexis leaned forward, eager to witness my humiliation. "I want to thank you, Dad, for making this so much easier than I expected." I reached into my purse and pulled out a set of keys, placing them deliberately on the table with a soft clink that somehow echoed in the silent room. "Since I am no longer family," I said calmly, "I guess you won't be needing these anymore." My father stared at the keys to the Mercedes registered in my name, comprehension slowly dawning on his face. "I've also taken the liberty of closing our joint trust account." I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Don't worry, the money hasn't disappeared. I've simply moved it to a secure account until we can properly address the unauthorized withdrawals you've been making. The colour drained from my father's face. Murmurs spread through the room as the carefully constructed narrative began to crumble. What unauthorized withdrawals? Someone asked. I turned to address the table. My father has been secretly taking money from our family trust to prop up his failing law firm. Over $200,000 in the past 3 months alone. Money that belongs to my mother's retirement as well as his. My father attempted to regain control. This is exactly the kind of interference I was talking about. Sophie has no understanding of business operations. Actually, I countered, I understand perfectly. That's why I brought these. I removed a folder from my bag and set it on the table. These are financial records showing exactly where the money went. They also show that the firm has been insolvent for months. Rather than address the problem properly, my father chose to drain family resources while hiding the truth from everyone, including my mother. All eyes turned to my father, whose confident posture had begun to waver. She's twisting the facts, he insisted. These are temporary business measures. Is that why you tried to remove me from the trust without my knowledge? Is that why you instructed our family attorney not to speak with me? I asked. Is that why you and Alexis planned this entire evening specifically to discredit me before I could reveal what I'd discovered? Gasps and whispers filled the room. My mother finally looked up, her expression a mix of confusion and dawning horror. Richard, she said quietly, what is she talking about? What's happening to our money? Before he could answer, Alexis jumped in, her voice sharp with artificial confidence. Is that all you've got, Sophie? Some boring financial documents? No one cares about your spreadsheets and bank statements. She laughed, expecting others to join her, but the room remained uncomfortably silent. Her laughter faded awkwardly. Actually, there's more, I said, turning to face her directly. Would you like to explain to Mom how you afforded your trip to Paris and your new watch, or should I show everyone the trust withdrawal receipts with your name on them? Alexis's face flushed crimson. That's different. Dad approved those expenses. Yes, he did, I agreed. $50,000 for a vacation while his business was collapsing. Another $30,000 for your apartment renovation. All from the trust that's meant to secure our parents' retirement. My mother stood suddenly, her voice uncharacteristically firm. Richard, is this true? Have you been taking money from our retirement? For perhaps the first time in his life, my father seemed at a loss for words. Margaret? It's complicated. The firm needed temporary support. And Alexis's shopping sprees? Her apartment were those business expenses too. My mother's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. The room had transformed from a celebration to something resembling a courtroom with my father, now the one on trial. The family, friends and relatives who had applauded moments earlier now watched with uncomfortable fascination. This is a private family matter, my father announced, trying to regain authority. I think it's time we concluded this evening. I agree, I said, gathering my belongings. I've said what I came to say. I've protected what I could of our family's assets from further mismanagement. The rest is up to all of you. I turned to my mother. Happy birthday, Mum. Your gift is the truth. What you do with it is your choice. As I walked toward the exit, I heard Alexis's voice behind me, no longer confident but tinged with panic. Sophie, wait! You can't just leave like this. I paused at the door and looked back at the chaos I'd left behind. My father standing rigid with anger and embarrassment. My mother's face a mask of betrayal, though not directed at me. Alexis half rising from her seat, suddenly realizing the gravity of the situation. I'm not family anymore, remember? I said simply and walked out. The cool evening air felt like freedom as I made my way to my car. For 32 years, I had contorted myself to fit into my family's expectations. For 32 years, I had accepted conditional love as the best I could hope for. Now walking away from that dining room, I felt light enough to float. I drove home to my apartment, turned off my phone, and poured myself a glass of wine. Whatever happened next, I had finally stood up for myself. No matter what came of it, that alone was a victory worth celebrating. The pounding on my apartment door started exactly 28 minutes after I left the restaurant. I knew because I'd been staring at the clock, wondering how long it would take for the fallout to reach me. Through the peephole, I could see Alexis, her makeup smudged and her expression frantic. I briefly considered not answering, but decided it was better to face this now than prolong the inevitable. When I opened the door, she burst in without waiting for an invitation. What the hell, Sophie, what? She shouted, whirling to face me. You completely humiliated Dad in front of everyone. Do you have any idea what you've done? I do, actually, I replied calmly, closing the door. I stopped enabling a situation that was hurting our entire family. By announcing our private business to every relative and friend we have, by making Dad look like a criminal. I crossed my arms. Dad did that himself when he decided to drain the family trust for his failing business and your shopping habits. It wasn't like that, she insisted, pacing my living room. The firm just needed some temporary help. It would have all worked out. The firm has lost its major clients and can't make payroll. It's not a temporary problem. It's bankruptcy that Dad has been avoiding by using Mum's retirement money. Alexis stopped pacing and looked at me with narrowed eyes. You've always been jealous that Dad and I are close. You've been looking for a way to come between us for years. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity. Is that what you think this is about, jealousy, Alexis? I don't care that Dad favours you. I care that he's burning through money that isn't just his to lose. Money that Mum will need someday. So you appointed yourself the financial police. Nobody asked you to interfere. Actually, as co-manager of the trust, it's literally my responsibility to interfere when I see mismanagement. Alexis threw her hands up in frustration. God, you're so self-righteous. You think you're better than everyone because you wear fancy suits and talk about investments all day. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that anger wouldn't help. Why are you here? Alexis, what do you want from me? Her demeanor suddenly shifted vulnerability, replacing anger. You have to fix this, Sophie. You have to tell everyone you made a mistake. I didn't make a mistake. Everything I said was true. But Dad could get in serious trouble. There are tax implications and legal issues if what you said goes public. Her voice dropped to a whisper. They could investigate him for misappropriation of funds. And there it was, the real reason for her panic. Not concern for our parents' financial security, but fear that her comfortable lifestyle might be disrupted if our father faced consequences. That's why you're really here, isn't it? I said, realization dawning. You're not worried about Dad's reputation. You're worried about what happens to your allowance if his firm goes under and he faces legal problems. Alexis's expression confirmed my suspicion before she could deny it. It's not just about money, she protested weakly. It's about our family. Our family, I repeated. The same family that just publicly disowned me, the family that applauded when Dad announced I wasn't part of it anymore. He didn't mean it like that. He was just angry about you freezing the accounts. He meant exactly what he said, and so did I. I moved toward the door. I think you should go now. Sophie, please. Alexis's voice cracked, genuine fear replacing her earlier bravado. I don't know what to do. After you left, everything fell apart. Mum started crying and asking Dad all these questions he couldn't answer. People were whispering and leaving. It was horrible. Despite everything, I felt a pang of sympathy. My sister, for all her flaws, had been raised in the same dysfunctional environment I had. The difference was that, while I had developed armor against our father's manipulation, she had thrived on his approval, never questioning the price. What happened after I left? I asked, softening slightly. Mum demanded to see the trust statements. When Dad tried to change the subject, she actually raised her voice. I've never heard her do that before. Alexis sank onto my sofa, looking suddenly exhausted. Then Uncle James started asking questions about his investment in Dad's firm, and Aunt Patricia mentioned something about her sister losing money in a similar situation. My phone, which I'd turned back on just minutes before Alexis arrived, began ringing. My mother's name flashed on the screen. Alexis looked at me pleadingly. Please talk to her. She needs to hear that everything will be okay. I accepted the call, putting it on speaker so Alexis could hear. Sophie. My mother's voice sounded strange, stronger somehow, despite the obvious fact that she'd been crying. Are you there? I'm here, Mom. Are you okay? No, darling, I'm not okay. I haven't been okay for a very long time, I think. There was a new quality to her tone, a firmness I'd rarely heard. I need to ask you something, and I need the absolute truth. Of course. How bad is it? The money, the firm, all of it. How bad? I glanced at Alexis, who was watching me with wide, fearful eyes. This was the moment. I could soften the truth to spare feelings as I'd done so many times before, or I could give my mother the honesty she deserved. It's bad, Mum. The firm is essentially bankrupt. Dad has withdrawn over $200,000 from the family trust in the last 3 months. There are unpaid tax liens. Without immediate intervention, you could lose everything, including the house. The silence that followed was profound. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice calm and clear. I need your help, Sophie. Not your father's kind of help that hides problems behind closed doors, but real help. Can you meet me tomorrow? There are decisions I need to make. Alexis was shaking her head frantically, mouthing no at me. Yes, I can help, I replied, ignoring my sister. We can meet at my office. I'll have my team prepare options. Thank you, darling. And Sophie, I'm sorry. I should have stood up for you tonight. I should have stood up for you many times before. After we hung up, Alexis stared at me in disbelief. You've turned Mom against Dad. Do you realize what you've done to our family? I didn't turn anyone against anyone. I just stopped participating in the lies. I stood, indicating that our conversation was over. You can keep pretending everything is fine, Alexis, or you can face reality and be part of the solution. Your choice. As I showed her to the door, my phone pinged with a text message. It was from my father, the first direct communication from him since I'd left the restaurant. We need to talk. Family only. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. I showed the message to Alexis. Interesting that I'm suddenly family again when he needs something. She looked at me with a mixture of resentment and desperation. Will you go? Yes, I said after a moment's consideration, but not alone and not on his terms. For the first time in my life, I would be meeting my father as an equal, not as the daughter perpetually seeking his approval. Whatever came next, the old dynamics were gone, forever washed away by the truth I'd finally had the courage to speak. As I closed the door behind Alexis, I realized that in losing the family I'd always wanted but never truly had, I might finally find the strength to build something real from the ashes. The law offices of Brennan & Associates occupied the 27th floor of a sleek downtown building. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city, and the reception area featured original artwork and furnishings that subtly conveyed success without ostentation. This was intentional, as Janet Brennan, my chosen attorney, believed that true power never needed to announce itself loudly. I had arrived 30 minutes early to brief Janet on the situation. She listened carefully, occasionally making notes, her expression remaining professionally neutral even as I revealed the more painful personal details. So to summarize, she said when I finished, your father has been improperly using family trust funds to prop up his failing business, attempted to remove you as co-trustee. When you questioned his actions, publicly disowned you when that failed, and now wants a private family meeting, presumably to convince you to reverse the protective measures you've taken with the accounts. That about covers it, I confirmed. She nodded thoughtfully. And you're certain you want me present for this meeting? Family disputes can often be resolved more amicably without attorneys in the room. In normal families, perhaps, I replied. But my father is himself an attorney who has used legal intimidation as a parenting technique for 30 years. I need someone in my corner who speaks his language. At precisely 10 o'clock, my parents and Alexis were shown into the conference room. My father's face darkened when he saw Janet sitting beside me, but he quickly masked his displeasure with a practiced smile. I believed I was clear that this was to be a family meeting, he said, remaining standing while my mother and Alexis took seats across from us. Janet is here at my request, I replied calmly. Given the legal nature of the trust issues we need to discuss, it seemed appropriate. Sophie, my mother interjected before my father could respond. We just want to talk, to understand what's happening and find a solution together. I noticed that she had chosen the seat furthest from my father, a small but significant change from her usual position right beside him. That's why I'm here, I assured her. But after what happened at your birthday dinner, I think we can all agree that some professional guidance might help keep our discussion productive. My father finally sat his jaw visibly tight. Very well, let's get to the point. You've frozen assets that don't belong exclusively to you, Sophie. I need those restrictions lifted immediately. Janet opened a folder before her. Actually, Mr. Hamilton, as co-trustee, your daughter acted well within her legal rights when she identified potential misuse of trust funds. The temporary freeze she implemented is a standard protective measure while the irregularities are investigated. Irregularities, my father scoffed. I made some perfectly legitimate business investments using funds that belong primarily to my wife and myself. Richard, my mother said quietly, you told me our retirement was secure. You said the firm was doing well. It will be Margaret once this unnecessary interference is removed. He glared at me. Sophie has always had a flair for dramatics. She's taken routine financial management and twisted it into some nefarious plot. $200,000 withdrawn in 90 days is hardly routine management, I pointed out, especially when the beneficiary is a business that's facing multiple lawsuits and tax liens. Alexis, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. Everyone needs to calm down. We're family. We can figure this out without getting lawyers involved. I looked at my sister, noting the dark circles under her eyes, poorly concealed by makeup. This isn't about family feelings, Alexis. It's about financial realities. Dad's firm is failing. Continuing to pour money into it is throwing good resources after bad. You don't know that, my father snapped. Hamilton Legal Services has survived downturns before. This is temporary. Janet slid a document across the table. These are the firm's financial statements for the past 18 months, Mr. Hamilton. As you can see, this is not a temporary downturn, but a consistent decline. The firm has lost 60% of its client base and has outstanding debts exceeding its assets by a significant margin. My father stared at the document, genuine shock crossing his face. Where did you get these? These are private records. They're also part of public tax filings and court documents from your recent lawsuits, Janet explained. Your daughter didn't need inside information to piece together the situation. My mother reached for the papers with a trembling hand. Richard, is this accurate? Are we really in this much trouble? For the first time in my life, I saw my father's carefully maintained facade crack completely. He seemed to age 10 years in that moment, his shoulders slumping as the weight of his secrets became too heavy to bear alone. I was handling it, he insisted, but the conviction had drained from his voice. I just needed time to turn things around. By spending our retirement, my mother's voice rose slightly, by lying to me for months, by publicly humiliating our daughter when she tried to help. He was protecting you, Mom, Alexis interjected. We all were. Sophie just couldn't leave well enough alone. Protecting me from what? The truth? My mother turned to Alexis with unexpected sharpness. And what about your role in all this? Sophie mentioned money being spent on your trips and apartment. Was that from our retirement fund too? Alexis glanced at my father, clearly expecting him to jump to her defense as he always had. When he remained silent, staring at the financial documents, her confidence visibly wavered. Dad said it was fine, she mumbled. He said the money was just sitting there anyway. The money was not just sitting there, I explained as gently as I could. It was invested to provide income for Mom and Dad's retirement. Every dollar you spent on Paris shopping sprees was a dollar they won't have when they need it. A heavy silence fell over the room. The family dynamics that had seemed so immutable for decades were crumbling before our eyes. My father, always the commanding center of our universe, looked lost. My mother, perpetually deferential, appeared angry and resolved. Alexis, accustomed to unconditional support, seemed suddenly childlike and afraid. What happens now? My mother finally asked, addressing me directly. Janet opened another folder. We've prepared several options for moving forward. The primary goal is to protect the remaining assets in the family trust while addressing the business situation responsibly. As she outlined the various pathways from bankruptcy protection for the firm to potential sale of assets, I watched my father's face. The arrogance that had defined him throughout my childhood had vanished, replaced by something I'd never seen before: vulnerability. This is your professional recommendation? He asked when Janet finished, his voice uncharacteristically humble. It is, she confirmed. And speaking frankly, Mr. Hamilton, these are your best options for avoiding potential legal consequences beyond financial loss. Some of the transfers from the trust could be construed as improper if examined by regulatory authorities. The implication hung in the air. My father, who had built his career on legal expertise, had potentially crossed lines that could result in more than financial penalties. I need to review these options carefully, he said finally. This is a lot to process. Of course, Janet agreed, but I should note that time is a factor. The longer these issues remain unaddressed, the fewer options will be available. My mother stood suddenly. I'd like to speak with Sophie alone, please. Everyone looked surprised, none more than my father. Margaret? We should discuss this together as a family. We will, she assured him, her voice firm. But first, I need a few minutes with my daughter. She led me to a small sitting area in the corner of the room, far enough away that our conversation wouldn't be overheard. For a long moment, she simply looked at me, her eyes taking in my face, as if seeing it clearly for the first time in years. I failed you, she said finally, her voice steady, despite the tears gathering in her eyes. I let his need for control become more important than your need for support. I told myself I was keeping the peace, but really, I was just afraid. Mom, you don't have to. Yes, I do, she interrupted gently. For too many years, I've chosen the easy path of silence. But watching you stand up at that birthday dinner, watching you speak truth even when everyone was against you, I realized that's the kind of courage I should have shown long ago. She took my hands in hers. I'm so proud of you, Sophie, not because of your success or your money or your prestigious job. I'm proud of your integrity, your strength. I'm proud that despite how we raised you, you became someone who stands up for what's right. Her words washed over me like a healing balm. For so many years, I had craved exactly this recognition, not of my achievements, but of my worth as a person. Coming now in the midst of family crisis, it felt both belated and perfectly timed. What will you do? I asked. She glanced back at my father, who was engaged in intense conversation with Janet, while Alexis watched anxiously. I don't know exactly, but for the first time in 40 years, I'll be making that decision for myself, not just following his lead. When we rejoined the others, something fundamental had shifted. My father looked up at us, his expression uncertain, perhaps sensing that the unquestioning support he had relied on for decades was no longer guaranteed. I think we've covered enough for today, he said, gathering his papers. I'll review these options and we can reconvene later this week. That would be fine, I agreed, but the trust protections will remain in place until we have a formal agreement on how to proceed. He looked as if he might argue, then simply nodded. Understood. As we prepared to leave, Alexis approached me hesitantly. Sophie, can we talk sometime, just us? The request surprised me. Of course. Call me when you're ready. We parted in the lobby, my parents heading in one direction, Alexis in another, and me in a third. For the first time in memory, the Hamilton family was moving along separate paths, each of us forced to reconsider our place in the constellation that had defined us for so long. As I watched them go, I felt neither triumph nor satisfaction, only a quiet certainty that whatever happened next, none of us would ever be the same again. 6 months passed, like a season of change, each day bringing subtle shifts in the landscape of our family. The autumn of crisis gradually yielded to a winter of difficult truths, followed by the first tentative sprouts of spring renewal. My father's law firm could not be saved in its current form. After reviewing all options with financial advisors and bankruptcy attorneys, he made the difficult decision to dissolve the partnership and sell the assets. The process was painful but necessary, stripping away the professional identity he had clutched so tightly for decades. What surprised me most was his eventual acceptance. The man who had once declared Hamilton's never surrender found a kind of peace in finally laying down his arms. I should have listened to you sooner, he admitted one afternoon as we reviewed the final dissolution paperwork in my office. Pride is expensive. It was the closest thing to an apology I was likely to receive, and I accepted it as such. Our relationship remained tentative, redefined by new boundaries and cautious respect rather than the old patterns of dominance and submission. We would never have the warm father-daughter bond I had envied in friends, but we had found a way to interact as adults, each acknowledging the other's strengths and limitations. My mother underwent the most dramatic transformation. After 40 years of deferring to my father's decisions, she discovered her own voice. She rejoined the workforce part-time as a financial literacy coach at a community centre, teaching others the skills she had always possessed, but rarely exercised in her own home. I feel useful again, she told me over lunch one day, her eyes bright with purpose. All those years managing the bank, I helped strangers make smart choices while letting your father make all of ours. The irony is almost painful. She and my father remained together, but their marriage evolved into something more balanced. He consulted her on decisions large and small. She expressed opinions without checking his reaction first. They were learning awkwardly but sincerely to be partners rather than leader and follower. Alexis's journey was perhaps the most challenging. Having built her identity around being the favoured daughter, the sudden withdrawal of financial support and unconditional approval left her adrift. Our first few conversations after the confrontation were strained and defensive. You've ruined everything, she accused Uriah during one particularly difficult phone call. Dad is depressed, Mum is never home, and I had to get a real job working retail. That's called being an adult, I replied, trying to keep the frustration from my voice. Most people work for what they have. Easy for you to say, you've always been good at all that boring financial stuff. I wasn't born knowing it, Alexis. I learnt because I had to. Gradually, through many such conversations, something unexpected happened. My sister began to ask questions about budgeting, about investments, about building credit. Beneath her resentment lay a growing recognition that the skills I had developed out of necessity were ones she now needed to acquire by choice. I got promoted to assistant manager, she told me 3 months into her first real job. The pride in her voice was something I had never heard before. My boss said I have a good eye for merchandising and customer trends. That's wonderful, Alexis. You've always had great taste and social instincts. It makes perfect sense that you'd excel at retail. Yeah, well, it doesn't pay enough for me to keep my apartment, so I'm getting a roommate next month. That part sucks. It does, I agreed. But it's temporary. You're building something real now. The trust issue was resolved through a formal agreement that protected the remaining assets while providing reasonable access for legitimate needs. My father, once he accepted the inevitable, brought his legal expertise to bear on creating a structure that would prevent future misuse while preserving family harmony. Today marks my mother's 66th birthday. Instead of a pretentious restaurant filled with superficial acquaintances, we gathered at her favourite local bistro. Just the 4 of us, no audience, no performance. She blew out the candles on a simple chocolate cake, smiling as we applauded. No big speeches this year, my father joked, the self-deprecating humour still new and slightly awkward on his lips. Thank goodness for that, my mother replied with a light laugh. Though I must say, last year's certainly led to some unexpected changes. For the better, I added, raising my glass. Alexis nodded, adding her glass to the toast. Weirdly, yeah, even though I'm making about 1/10 of what Dad used to give me. But you're earning it, my mother pointed out. That makes it worth more. Are you Josie? As we continued our meal, sharing stories and plans, without the undercurrent of competition and judgment that had characterized our family gatherings for decades, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. The painful truth is that sometimes you have to lose the family you thought you needed in order to build the family you actually deserve. For 32 years, I contorted myself to fit an impossible mold seeking approval that was never going to come on terms I could accept. It took a public rejection, a moment of absolute clarity amid humiliation, for me to finally stand up and say enough. Not dramatically, not with vengeance, but with the simple dignity of someone who knows her worth isn't determined by others' assessments. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. It's the foundation upon which genuine relationships can be built. As long as I accepted conditional love as the best I could hope for, that's exactly what I received. The greatest gift I gave myself wasn't financial security or professional success. It was the freedom to exist without constantly seeking validation from people who weren't equipped to give it. The peace that comes from that kind of internal liberation is beyond price. Our family isn't perfect now. We still disagree, still occasionally fall into old patterns. But we're learning to communicate honestly, to respect boundaries, to accept each other as complex individuals, rather than fixed roles in an unchanging hierarchy. As we finish our dessert, my mother reaches across the table to squeeze my hand. I was thinking about what you said last year, Sophie, about my birthday gift being the truth. You were right. It was painful, but it was exactly what I needed. In her eyes, I see not just maternal love, but genuine respect peer to peer. It's the relationship I always wanted, but never believed possible. The journey from seeking approval to finding self-worth is rarely smooth or simple. It requires courage to stand alone to speak truth, even when every voice around you demands silence. But on the other side of that difficult passage lies the possibility of authentic connection of relationships based on mutual respect rather than power and submission. Family isn't defined by blood alone, but by how we treat each other. True family lifts you up, acknowledges your value, and loves you, not despite your boundaries, but because of the authentic self those boundaries protect. Have you ever had to stand up to family when no one was on your side? How did you find the courage to speak your truth? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more authentic conversations about family dynamics and personal growth. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to break the cycles that no longer serve anyone. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to write your own.